Hello? Hello? Hello, I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but I am testing this out. Testing. Oh, great, you can hear me. Okay, I can't hear you, so this is one-sided. I apologize. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm so excited to learn from you as well, figure out what your needs are too, and we can address that toward the end of the presentation. Feel free to ask questions, and I'll address them again at the end, or intermittently as they apply to each topic. There are a lot of items to discuss and run through today, and I would also like to provide you with a follow-up email address and way to contact me. My Twitter handle is @B as in boy, ARANESS75. That's my Twitter handle. My name is Suzanne Barron, B-A-R-A-N, and today I'll be discussing not just blogging for your business, but content marketing ROI, how to actually measure growth and metrics as they apply to all content marketing collateral, shall we say, that is being published for each of your brands, companies, businesses, or personal brands. So I will start right now. And I'm just trying to get my presentation switched over to the next slide. Give me 1 second. I apologize for the slide. Oh, actually, not allowing. Apologies. Having some difficulties moving to the next slide. Okay. While I'm waiting to move to the next slide, which is pretty much my background, I will share with you some content marketing statistics that are pretty fairly recent, just to context. 74% of companies now are increasing their lead quality and quantity with content marketing. And that is probably why you're here today. That's also from the CN Staffing Tactics study on Curata, which is a content marketing platform, actually a content curation platform. What's important about this statistic is that there is a ton of content flooding cyberspace. but is it actionable? Is it relevant? Is it immediate? Does it actually move the needle forward? Where is the needle going? How are we measuring it? So another statistic that is helpful to note is that B2C marketers, business to consumers, are allowing a higher average proportion of their total marketing budget, content marketing this year. 32% or 25% of last year. So it's even more effective to measure how content marketing is reaching your audience and where it engages your consumers in the cycle. So also 82% of consumers feel more positive about a company after reading their custom content. And I don't mean curated content, I actually mean content marketing that's building trust with your customers. If a person gets value from consuming your content, that's a step in the right direction for building that trust and pushing them down the funnel. Over the last 3 years in the U.S., the effectiveness of content has dropped by a mere 12%. Not too bad, but not great either. All marketers realize that content works to reach people over other marketing strategies. And with more content published every day, the more difficult it is to stand out and drive results as consumers are inundated with too many options. We're constantly seeing that in the form of billboards. Back in the 70s, there were maybe 1,000 messages that someone might see a day, and today there might be 500,000 messages someone actually sees within 8 hours a day, from email messages to tweets to LinkedIn updates. Anywhere and everywhere, we're being bombarded by messages. So it's not only important to measure how effective content is, but how it's getting to the right audience at the right time. Again, I'm having technical difficulties moving my slides to the next slide, and it's not optimal right now. I'm talking through live chat. This is not possible. I can continue talking about my background in the interim. So who am I and how do I know what I know? I'll say lots of school of hard knocks, type of garnering of information through the years. I'm an 18-year digital marketing veteran, and I have led a stable of bloggers at AT&T, Advertising Services, Yahoo, and California Psychic. I've been a department lead and creator of content strategy and content marketing services at 5 major interactive agencies with entertainment, consumer technology, consumer product services, small business services, and other types of brands. You might have heard of Rosetta, owned by Publicis, and Saatchi, where I developed an entire Toyota social omni-channel strategy campaign, and then also a smaller content marketing division of a place called Millbrae with 12 different business verticals, and then another smaller agency called Brighter Collective, where I help them at medical university.
Hi, Suzanne. Suzanne,
Hi.
This is Walter from Bright Talk. I can actually move the slides for you. Why don't you let me know which slide you're currently on, and then every time you want me to move forward, just go ahead and say next slide.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That really helps.
Yeah, no worries.
There's no the buttons disappeared. So that helps. Thank you. I'm also a guest panelist and speaker for a host of audiences, and I take a lot of pride in helping others do what I do and learn what I've learned. And by no means do I classify myself as the end-all, be-all, but I do have a lot of experience bolstering traffic, relevancy, immediacy and programming content for one of the largest audiences on the internet, general audience, segmented audiences, and varied audiences for Yahoo, which had 189 million unique visitors a month. And if a piece of content on that homepage did not click at 300 to 500,000 clicks per second, it was systematically removed from the programming grid, of which I was a part with 30 different other programmers. And then the piece of content was actually placed on a large projector screen, and another 12 or so staff members across the country and the world would comment and sometimes lacerate the packaging of content, from the image to the asset to the headline to the sub-assets, the sublinks, etc. So that became content marketing boot camp for me, because I had to make sure that each property that was vying for homepage real estate, the front doors that would connect to their underlying properties, actually brought the amount of clicks back that they needed to satisfy not only their advertisers, but movie studios and television studios and other marketing priorities. So I learned to package, pitch, and derive metrics that would bolster these properties to the number one position to beat our competitors every month through ComScore Total. And I will share with you some of those tricks of the trade today when it comes to content marketing packaging. And Walter, if you don't mind, we can move on to slide 3. So what you're going to learn today, your blog is actually a growth engine. And I'm talking more about blogging than on-page content, which is more specific to your product or service. Blogging gives you an opportunity to create more of a wiki and a forum and a feedback center, and unites your content with social and your omnichannel strategy to become your number one growth engine. And it's also the easiest vehicle to monitor, to create content for, not to worry as much about compliance issues, given that you do have a blog and there are certain factors and governance issues set up in advance. Compliance should work with you on that. I recently helped set up a content hub for Capital Group, a financial investment company with $1.3 trillion in assets under management, and their compliance team was extremely rigorous. We had FINRA, we had all kinds of different disclaimers we had to put up. So the blog/content hub was a great way to facilitate this type of content in advance and set up some standards with compliance so that there were no red flags or last-minute changes that were difficult to make. So today we'll discuss that. We'll discuss what the goals are, building connections with your audience, building connections with other content providers and partnerships, and how to recruit an audience, and then also how to get started for those who are maybe refreshing their experience or just beginning the embryonic phase of content marketing creation through a blogging engine. And I'm ready to move on to slide 4. So why blog? Blogging helps, as I mentioned before, connecting your audience, connecting partnerships, connecting your omni-channel strategy, connecting everything in one central hub. You can even create newsletter articles, transactional emails, ebooks, all different types of content just through blog posts themselves. You can leverage feedback from your audience, helping to solve their problems. You can connect with them through compelling stories. You can spotlight them. You can put them in lights, like as we like to call leaderboards. If I've done a lot of work with video gaming entities and building experiences and virtual commerce experiences, e-commerce experiences, and even social experiences around some multiplayer games. And one thing I learned is that everyone loves seeing their name in lights. So why not make your customers have their own leaderboard? this week X customer said X comment. It's like the number one comment of the week, or the best feature that we have, and you can have something like what our consumers said, or what you said, or what we heard, or even less general and more specific. You can learn something new. You can also build human interest and trust through a blog. It can be a two-way conversation. Ideally, it should be an open dialogue and not just a way to funnel information at your audience, but to make them part of the process. I'm ready to move on to slide 5. So content marketing by the numbers. I basically talked about some content marketing strategy statistics earlier. In fact, 56% of B2C marketers and 64% of B2B marketers don't have a documented content marketing strategy. So that would be my number one message and takeaway today, is to create that strategy. I will help you do so, and I can help also fill in any gaps and answer any questions regarding that. But I will tell you that at AT&T Advertising Solutions, where I worked, I was the first one to come in there and actually create and document a 45-page strategy. Now, that may seem excessive, but I was a consultant hired to build the engine, and that was my first step in doing so. And it was also a way to evangelize that document and get buy-in and collaborate with product teams, marketing teams, compliance teams, social teams, and everyone can sort of react to one living, breathing document, and then everyone's on the same page as well, and you get to break down silos. So I would say, number one, a documented content marketing strategy, even if it's a brief outline, is going to be your best friend. Just to read through these numbers, 68% of CMOs are shifting from traditional marketing to content marketing. 9 out of 10 companies market content with HubSpot. I've actually been interviewed by HubSpot as one of the top 15 digital marketers. This came out about 2 years ago, and one of the things that I said to them that I hadn't seen other remarks about were how to tie in your SEO strategy, which seems obvious but can be quite tricky. Also tying into your editorial calendar, your content marketing plan, hashtags and keywords that can become content pillars and themes, which I'll get into later. Your website conversion rate is going to be nearly 6 times higher for content marketing adopters than non-adopters. That's a huge selling point for a strategy. And then also 82% of marketers who blog see positive ROI for their inbound marketing, another great HubSpot quote. And we can move on to the next slide. So more specifics, because I'm a number cruncher and pretty nerdy that way, as I'm sure you all are, and it's very important as marketers these days to be right and left-brained. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that within my experience for different brands I've worked with, asking, hey, how are you so creative and numbers-minded? Well, you have to be both things. It's no longer the day of traditional marketing. You do need to be an expert or a jack of all trades, so to speak. So 37% of marketers say blogs are the most valuable type of content marketing. I believe that is that's the truth, and that's why I'm presenting today. And brands that create 15 blog posts per month average 1,200 new leads per month. That's a pretty high number. Business-to-business companies that generate 67% more leads per month than those who do not blog. That's a number you can't ignore either. These are great statistics for making a case for content marketing and content marketing strategy, hiring resources, getting the right resources, increasing your budget, getting buy-in, breaking down silos. This is all relevant to making a case. Blogs also give websites a whopping 434% more index pages and 97% more index links. And blog posts incorporating video attract 3 times as many inbound links as blog posts without video. And that's because we're now in the visual age of Instagram and Snapchat and Instagram stories, and integrating that within, and and there, of course, is like Twitter Vine was big back in 2013. You barely hear anymore about that. Vimeo and some others. YouTube, of course, YouTube channels are important. Creating that and linking to those, and even if you curate videos and don't have the marketing budget to create videos, which we'll get to later on, it'll help your inbound links. It'll help drive traffic. It'll help drive brand awareness and engagement. I'm ready to move on to the next slide. Knowing your goals, and we can move on to the next slide too. I'll give you sort of key areas and examples as to how to know your goals. Part of content strategy, for those who are aware and those who aren't aware, so many places I've worked to, they said, we need a content strategy department, a team, services. Okay, well, how do we evangelize it? Well, we need a sentence that describes content strategy to sort of help jumpstart people's memories and get them building awareness and building knowledge from that discipline. So one of the things that I like to say is that content strategy, to quote one of my mentors at Sapient Nitro, Kevin Nichols, he's definitely someone you should follow. Him and Robert Rose at the Content Marketing Institute as well. They are pretty much leaders in this space. And one thing that Kevin has said is offering up the right content to the right audience at the right time is the sweet spot. That is content strategy. Now, that's boiling it down, but essentially it's people, process, technology, and measurement. So when you have a certain goal for your site and a certain message, that's your marketing message. Your users also have a goal. They either want to research something, they have interest in something, they want to educate themselves, figure out what that goal is. The sweet spot between those two goals, your user's goal and your business goal, that's content strategy in that middle layer. And that's where your content marketing strategy will kind of funnel into, not fuel. So here are some key areas and examples to pay attention to. As far as tracking revenue, you would look at leads, consumers, and retention efforts. Brand assets are a good way of reaching out to communities, pre-launching an audience, like creating buzz prior to, let's say, a prototype being launched or a beta test or even a new service. Customer feedback, of course, and social virality. Networking could be another goal, whether do you want to create new partnerships, do you want to create introductions, what are your prospects looking for, what do they want to see, how do they want to connect, do they need more meetup groups, do they need to connect offline, how do they like to consume information. And then also your other goal might be influencing others, of course, not just getting social influencers to talk about your product or service, or blogging influencers or those that are prominent in a key industry or service layer, but really building your own influence in the space and becoming an influencer, becoming an advocate of your audience, which is definitely something I can tell you that a lot of companies overlook. So what plays into that as a tool, definitely search engine optimization, off-page and on-page, branding, and your social presence. These all add up in sales. It looks complicated. There are lots of different verticals, but I will break it down as much as possible to make it formulaic for you over time. So once you have all of these goals in place, you can start building the more creative content layers and then measuring more effectively. And I'm ready to move on to the next slide. We're going to talk about building connections here, and go to the next slide. So I mentioned AT&T. AT&T Small Business Solutions was bought by Yellow Pages, and then a private equity firm bought Yellow Pages. But while I was there, all that they had was a newsletter for 3,000 subscribers, and it sat on its own platform. And I kid you not, the URL was 1-800-GetReal.com, and the page is dead-ended, and we lost subscribers over time. But I was dealing with a very traditional department that had said, well, this is the way we've always done things, it's the way we're comfortable doing things. And very territorial, siloed, structured, and very old school kind of non-collaborative thinking on the person who, quote, owns the email newsletter and the list and the subscribers. And AT&T Small Business Solutions was designed to reach out to small businesses. They had advertising solutions like SEO, social presence management, reputation building and reputation management. You could submit listings into Yellow Pages for your company, sort of like Yelp. You could also get some like email newsletter content creation and traction and advice. But the ironic thing about it all is that you had to dial a 1-800 number to reach a salesperson in order to learn more about the services. So there wasn't a lot of digital collateral. There wasn't a content marketing strategy. There wasn't a content marketing team. There were no resources. I had to create buy-in and evangelize the practice for many different VPs, product owners. How will this work? How will we provide content to you? What kind of landing pages do you need? And they had a very small web presence, and their newsletters, and this you might find interesting at the time, had 12 different verticals they were going out to. The same content for each vertical, but they would do sort of like an ad-lib. They would swap out the photo of a construction worker for a baker, let's say, if they were reaching out to a small bakery business like Magnolia in New York and Los Angeles, for example. And the content the words would be swapped out, like baker would be swapped out for mechanic. And then you'd have clergyman or salon owner or whatever the vertical was. So I know you can't really tell so well from the graphics, but this was kind of an agnostic photo of just a generic-looking guy and how to create a marketing plan, which was your roadmap to success. So my first order of business there was to educate and gain participation and see what this very diverse audience really needed in terms of information and education and brand awareness. Another issue that AT&T faced was no one had heard of AT&T Advertising Solution or Small Business Solution. And those who were internal provided so many different answers as to what our goals were and how we were to execute those goals. So it was almost like we did internal surveys, and they all came out differently, like a game of telephone with different answers. So we had to unify our own teams first, get organized, and then come out with a plan. So messaging needed to be consistent across all platforms, and they were starting to open up social channels. So that has to be consistent as well as part of the content marketing plan. And I can show you how I pretty much essentially bridged the gap between all these pieces within 9 months. And so if we move on to the next slide, I can give you some more meat and potatoes. Well, again, like I said, there are 12 different business verticals. The imagery you see are market facts and sales sheets that were given to actual salespeople, sales collateral, mostly print. They had to be scanned online. And then there was one local insights digital report that we got maybe once a month that I asked the email newsletter chief to incorporate, and didn't want to do so. So it was very difficult to find the right collateral and then the right delivery mechanism for the different audiences. So there's fragmented or limited content, no consolidated strategy, and the brand identity crisis, as I described earlier. And I think we can go to the next slide. So it's difficult to see this, but I'm totally willing to send each and every one of you who reach out, whether on Twitter or at the end I'll give you my email address. I can send you this. It's a sales engagement cycle, but I built this from something called a message map. And what I did was I looked at the type of service we provided at AT&T Advertising Solutions. I looked at the need of the customer, whether it was, and I tried to take the needs and boil them down into three essential needs: getting found, building a strong reputation, and ultimately getting customers. So building three very distinct and strong categories with which to build your content marketing pillar is essential. There were, so many different services, but I rolled them up into these three categories, and that way we can map needs better. We can find out what the pain points are, how the pain points apply, what types of content appeal to those pain points, what types of personas would be consuming that type of content, and then how to kind of tweak and tailor it as it goes on. So this became, I would say, like our strategy piece, and I had to get buy-in from a couple of VPs in product and marketing to actually say, is it okay if we take all of our services and roll them up in three key areas? And we were excited by that process because we boiled down the service into its essential. And that's one takeaway I'd like to express today is if you have diverse services and offshoots and different types of consumers and personas, map them all out in advance. Know who they are. A lot of times it seems simple for a lot of companies fail to do so. So moving on to the next slide. This is what the advertising solutions site looked like in 2013. But if you go to adsolutions.yp.com today, I believe the URL has changed. But they have three distinct categories that I put in place of getting found, your reputation, getting customers, and the services that then dovetail into those categories. So you can go broad and then deeper on the site, which this took a while to actually set up, but I helped to connect the voice, tone, and style. I did voice, tone, and style guidelines. We'll get to that later in the presentation as well. I created a knowledge center or hub, as they like to call it, and then hired writers by expertise and on a shoestring budget of $6,000 as well a month. So we can move on to the next slide. So again, to reiterate, your conversion rate, your brand impact, everything's connected. And the more you think of things in a connected, pattern-driven universe, the easier your time will be connecting to your consumer, relaying measurement and KPI information to other parts of the company, creating dashboards, hiring resources, again, solving your users' problems, communicating in a humanly fashion, just as when you're writing metadata descriptions for your site or SEO in general. You don't want to talk as if you're a machine language translation service. You want to actually speak within the vernacular and the vocabulary that your users use. Be quality-driven and don't self-promote. We'll get more into that deeper into the presentation. We can move on. Again, your conversion funnel through a prospect's eyes should definitely be measuring and looking at your user psychology, getting into the heads of your consumers as much as possible, whether that means talking to that target type and having meetups at meetup.com and spending time listening to other people and talking to other people. That will help you build relationships and then sell through storytelling. Too often we rely on technical means and the internet, Google, to do all this research for us, but really we need to just spend time talking to our prospects in person. Someone asked the question, are there any services or products that one should completely avoid? I don't know that there are. I think that's a general question, but maybe if more context could be provided, I can revisit that question. But we can move on to the next slide. Here's how to recruit an audience, and we can move on again. So I worked at a company for about a year called Outlook Amusements, which is the parent company of California Psychic. This was a new age advice business. Before you start laughing and way to the bank, I will tell you how I took the taboo and stigma out of the site. This is what it looked like before I actually came on board. It was just one big marketing ploy with just so much busyness going on. And, you know, do you want your free daily horoscope? Do you need to talk to an advisor? Some of the top stories. All of it didn't make any sense. It was just all fragmented. It was a $33 million a year business. Their target audience were women from ages 20 to 65. In fact, they had something called a concierge program with concierge clients who spent upwards of $50,000 on psychic advice per year. Their CRM program was lacking, basically sent out gift certificates on Christmas, didn't really cater to that audience, didn't ask about maybe some online features that they'd like, some ebooks, some ways that they could even maybe looking out for them to cut down on the phone calls and have some more self-empowerment, which is what I tried to do, and also tried to make the psychics look like celebrities and advice columnists. We made videos. We attached the videos to the psychic's actual page where you had ratings and reviews. Some negative reviews were not posted. My decision was to omit them until further information was extrapolated within a review, like, oh, I want to know if that person is, reliable, if their advice came true or not. Let's say the advice that they gave or the predictions that they made, I should say, didn't come true. What factors play into that? I tried to talk more about that and boil it down into more of here's just someone to talk to with a different spin on kind of new age advice than, let's say, your friend or your therapist. Some of the company's goals were, of course, to garner new customers, customer retention, to gain leads, and to increase their newsletter open rates. And we can move on to the next slide. So the growth for the company, this became the new homepage. Gets very busy, but I'll get into why. Growth began at the 6-month mark. I helped quadruple blog traffic from 80,000 page views per month to 500,000 page views per month. I increased the newsletter open and click-through rates, the highest since the company's inception in '95, from 3% to 8%, with 3.5 million subscribers. That subscriber base is now about 10 million today. The click-through rate of the email newsletters went from 65% to 75% to, at some point, 95% in 2010. What are some of the ways that I did this? One, making psychics seem more like your best friend. They're an average, everyday person. They just have more patience for digging into what you're trying to communicate, and more insight into your communication, and really just meditating on your issue and thinking about it and giving you a different spin. Like, for example, let's say you broke up with somebody. Writing down all the ways that you were responsible for the relationship's failure, what you can do to improve, and then what qualities you want to see in yourself in order to attract the right person in the future. These are self-awareness steps that may not occur to the everyday person who's freaking out about a breakup, for example. My priority with the CEOs of the company was, we have a fractured experience. We have print writers. They've been here forever. They don't know how to write for the web. They are producing newsletters that are too lengthy. They're writing in magazine format. So how can you rejuvenate the brand and the processes? So I studied the newsletter process from soup to nuts. At the time, we were on a blog called Typepad, a platform. I migrated content from Typepad to WordPress with a team of interns because I had a shoestring budget again. I hired freelance writers based on their experience in the space. Those that were Reiki healers, friends of mine. I reached out on LinkedIn for people that I didn't have contact with, like tarot readers, and then people who had like business advice experience, business consultants. Some of them wrote articles as well as to how a psychic could maybe help you illuminate different solutions that a regular, let's say, life coach or business coach couldn't. So there's stuff like that. And then the daily horoscope was almost always in the newsletter. Everyone wanted their daily horoscope of all 3.5 million subscribers. Most of them opened the email just to get their daily horoscope, but it dead-ended there. It went to a web page in a proprietary CMS, and again, it dead-ended, and there was no further action for the subscriber base to take. So it was wasted content that wasn't really solving a purpose. So instead, I used it as a way to attract more open rates and then add it to the homepage through an API feed through WordPress, show the recent blog posts, show the psychics that were online, and have it all tie together. But of course, I had to get a lot of buy-in. I had to get LAMP experts, Linux, Apache, and PHP experts to help migrate some of this content and figure out what the engine would be for content production. And within WordPress, the beauty of that is that there is a plugin that has a newsletter feature, and it can directly take you to a home page or a landing page or wherever you'd like to go and funnel your audience into that page. So that's essentially what I did, and then I chopped up the headlines, I made spoilers and teases, and then less is more. Less content in the newsletters was more, and I also tested subject headlines ad nauseam. So that was a lot of trial and error. We can move on to the next slide. So here's the upshot of what I did there. Programmed 150 pieces of content every 30 days, posted ahead of timely spin, figured out what the themes were, figured out what the keywords were, moved from Typepad to WordPress, developed a strategy with the product team for redesigning interior pages and compatibility tests and reports and natal charts. I chose keywords, identified secondary keywords. If I knew that one piece of content was clicking well, we would try to do a series of domino effect posts on subtopics relating to that, and I turned rookie print columnists and psychics and consultants into writers and subject matter experts. And we can continue to the next slide. So here are some core strategies when recruiting an audience. Guest posts, answering existing questions via LinkedIn, fora, communities, having paid channel acquisition, paid social channel acquisition with referral programs like FriendsEye. Definitely look into that. Not expensive. And some passive strategies can be social promotion because, again, you really need to know where your audience hangs out and what they're looking for. Like, for example, TrueCar came to me recently and said, we've got dealers. They don't use the web. and they don't rely on statistics that they reach. So how do we reach that audience? Some of them hang out on LinkedIn. I said, beat up. Make them the star. Make them the spotlight. Have them speak. Have them educate others. Build an offline network. They don't get the sport. They're always competing and fighting among each other. Break that down. That's beyond social promotion. Content syndication. I reached out at AT&T to a publication called Street Fighter, which is a hyper-local business report. And I said, hey there, can you promote our post on your site, or we'll put a link to your site on our site, do some sort of link exchange program, syndicate your content, try to sell it, try to propose it, try to do promotional exchanges and programs. And then garnering business partners and media channels, and working on your SEO strategy off-page and on-page to ensure that you're getting the organic traffic that you desire. We can move on to the next slide. How to get started, and the next slide there. Areas to tackle, again, your audience, how to develop that audience. Think about the persona. Think about the type of audience members you're trying to target, the psychology of that audience, their interests, their attitudes. Look at competitor sites. Look at where they hang out online. Look at what types of cars they drive, what types of businesses they have. Send them surveys. Poll them. Talk to a certain consumer or audience type on the street, at the coffee shop, wherever. Don't be shy. Don't self-isolate. Definitely not. You need to become a kind of an interviewer / someone who's a social psychologist who's excited about the prospect that they're working with. Make sure that the voice and messaging is on par. A lot of times students fail to do so. Look at your tone, style, and brand persona. Develop your budget, your tools, your editorial calendars, your content types, infographics, e-books, white papers. Figure out the frequency and cadence, the day parting strategies, when those types of pieces of content should go live on certain channels, when there's a dead end or a dearth of content, how to fill that in, search engine optimization, and of course, think about your metrics. How will you measure this? What do conversions look like? Is it signing up for email? Is it a simple conversion like that? Or is it actual purchase? Sales and distribution, very important. We can get to the next slide. So very briefly, voice, tone, and messaging is very important. If you'd like to read off on some ways to do so, Margot Bloomstein is a subject matter expert in the space. At AT&T, I did something called a card sorting exercise. We talked about what your personality is, what your personality isn't, a positive example of that, a counterexample of that, and why. And you might want to talk to different people within your company and even look at competitor spaces as well to see what that voice, tone, and message can be. We can move on to the next slide as well. So again, Margot Bloomstein's 3 words are: keep it consistent, infuse personality in your marketing message, and have a two-way conversation. Set up that messaging map, and I have one on my portfolio site, content-empress, EMPRESS.com. I created a message map for AT&T, for AVG Software, for Capital Group, for Cisco, for Intel, for even a hygienist organization that was discombobulated and had like 12 different personas that didn't know which to target or what point in the cycle. And again, you have a clever quote from Margot Bloomstein on the slide. We can move on to the next slide. Here's the card sorting exercise. Essentially, to figure out what your voice, tone, and messaging should be, and this is also good for those who are trying to build brand awareness and consistency, you want to take a bunch of index cards, write down one adjective per card on A, who we are as a business, B, who we aren't, and C, who we'd like to be. Take those cards, lay them out on a table, or you can do Post-its on a wall, and rearrange them according to prioritization and hierarchy and buy-in from your fellow colleagues within the company in different departments. You could do it departmental-wide, just do it with the marketing department, do it with the content marketing department. It's a good exercise in establishing that cadence and rhythm of what type of messages you want to send to prospects and to existing customers. We can move on to the next slide. This might be difficult to read. Again, I can provide you with these marketing materials, but essentially at Yahoo, one of the things that we did was we set up a lot of, how do we say it, like foundational marketing strategies. And one of the attributes is that we talked about is content attributes. Does content communicate your brand attributes? What types of content? For example, if you want to communicate trust and responsiveness to your audience, you would provide them with testimonials, case studies, success stories, customer spotlight, comments from the blog that you can create as posts. Any sort of piece of collateral that communicates those values. And do you offer personalized attention? Do you understand the local lay of the land? Do you offer customized marketing options? Do you highlight marketing opportunities that different consumers might have missed? What is the type of content that's the right content for the right audience at that time? And then we can move on from there to the next slide. The tools of your trade are definitely your editorial calendar and a keyword research worksheet. This one is one that I believe I did for Skype, and I showed the top keywords that drive organic traffic through Google and Bing. Those are different. Those are different in terms of your hashtags on Twitter might be different than your keywords and the main pillars and themes that apply to your audience. For example, a California subject, one of the top ranking posts was, can a sexless marriage work? So posing an improbable scenario as a probable question is definitely a way or a formulaic way to garner the traffic that you need. Posing things and packaging things in that sort of manner, and then setting out to tie those themes, keywords, hashtags, audience needs, pain points, features, product releases, events, all of that into one editorial calendar. And we can move on to the next slide. Just another example that you can put in your back pocket of the date, the topic, the date of the week, who the resource/writer is, what the category is, what the keywords are, and then also I would recommend putting in hyperlinks to articles or to pieces of content that you've done in the past, these sort of themes and topics, and putting that into your editorial calendar and making that your programming guide and grid and platform for the future. And we can move on to the next slide. This is difficult to see, but hopefully I can actually send this to you. It's from Toyota Let's Go Places. I came up with a bunch of themes like innovation, philanthropy, etc., and color-coded them. And then over time and each quarter, I asked what the priorities and the dealer events and the charity events and the different types of content that we're supposed to post, and all of that had to come together into one programming grid. And this is that a gargantuan effort, but it can be done. Next slide. Understanding your cost. So the content type, the production cost, the time it takes to produce. This is definitely something that you can view on your own. I'll go through it briefly, but this, according to my experience, it may not be the industry standard. A blog post can take 2 to 5 hours if you have a subject matter expert writing it, and 1 to 3 days to actually produce and revise. Infographics can range from even less than 1,500, depends how savvy your designer is and how many iterations and revisions it needs. Also, if you put down all of your research and you fact check all of that research in advance, it'll take less time. Video, obviously, is the most expensive. White papers can be pricey as well, unless you have a really quick turnaround time and a great subject matter expert. Ebooks and SlideShare and deck presentations, and we can move on again. Understand what you're measuring. See if your business really understands the cost of content production. Many times, I can tell you they do not, and you also need to find out how much content is being consumed, and if it's actionable, 50%, that's half of your content, will go untouched, unexamined, no reach, no eyeballs, no metrics. So you need to build a serious business case and measure your returns appropriately. Next slide. So here are some tips on using the engagement buying cycle for early stage prospects only. Produce non-promotional 80-20 content. That means 80% lifestyle and interest content, 20% hardcore, hard-hitting sales content that talks about your product or service on social. That's how we garnered more respect and trust and awareness at AT&T and other companies. Courting content, which is dating content, not literally dating, but actually courting your consumer and ensuring that they understand who you are and what you're about through some of your lifestyle content. And then knowing what percentage of online conversions are branded, how your message differs from that, any type of gap that you have within your content production could mean that your competitors are coming in and courting those prospects. Figure out where they're falling off your funnel. Measure how people find your site, and that's, again, SEO, and traffic is very important, organic traffic, that is. And if your digital content represents 5% of your branded content, you simply aren't reaching a sustainable share. And then there's some other more detailed tips at the bottom, but we can move on. So how to really measure your ROI: time spent, bounce rate on content versus advertising landing pages, repeat visits and engagement, value per subscriber, and retention and lifetime value. A lot of companies have asked, especially software as a service, how do we calculate our lifetime value customer? Find out how much time they're spending engaging with the content. Look at Google Analytics, look at Site Catalyst, figure out how many conversions you may not have reached. Are there prospects that you're bringing into the brand that haven't opened your email? Look at your revenue or lead value from your email list and divide that by the number of emails in your database, and you should figure out the gap of those that you have not been able to reach, and then brainstorm and create a plan and create content around how to reach them better and more efficiently, and play with subject headlines too. Next slide. How much would you have to spend to generate 1,000 clicks? This is Google AdWords. Again, if you're spending on AdWords, this isn't through organic means. Essentially, one thing that I might suggest is running a $10 a day budget for 2 weeks to know which keywords you should bid for your business. PPC is it's a very difficult engine to maneuver, but for $150, let's say, you'll have an answer that you received 300 visits in 15 weeks from that campaign. So your cost might be 1,000 clicks is $500. Your cost per click is 50 cents, and then your cost per user would be like $150 divided by 15, which would be $10 a user, let's say. So figure out if you have a budget for that. That will help you if organic traffic is not a route that's easy to implement, and if you don't have a strong SEO manager or team at your disposal. And we can go on to the final slide. I'm sorry that these are some key takeaways. One of the things out of these key takeaways that I would really recommend is setting up a Google alert for your company, product, service, or host of relevant topics And that way you can keep track of what's tracking, what's out there, what you're missing, what you're not missing, and if you're being mentioned. And thank you so much for your time. I don't see any questions. I see feedback, but I don't see any questions. So I will close this and let you know that my email address is DARANESSVENTURES@gmail.com. Thank you very much.